I arrived in this country in 1987. That's 31 years as an undocumented immigrant. It is a lifetime. I was 8 when I got here. And back in those days, people like me were called illegal aliens. That's a powerful term, illegal alien, because it rips you apart. As an alien, I was different. I was foreign. I didn't belong, and it was best if I just went away. I was illegal. I was a criminal. I was a lawbreaker. I didn't deserve sympathy from others. People that use the term illegals don't actually understand our immigration laws. I didn't understand them for most of my life. For instance, like many immigrants, I came to this country legally. I was here on a 6-month visa, and after it expired, I became something called out of status. However, because I was a minor, I could not yet break the law. When I turned 18 is when I started violating immigration law. But being out of status is not a criminal offense, it's a civil offense. The best equivalent I can give you is, it's like I park my car every day somewhere where I'm not supposed to. I just happen to not get a ticket or get towed. But that's essentially it. That's what makes us such terrible criminals. A common civil offense. And yet, in my youth, the term illegal alien weighed heavily on me, to the point where I started considering suicide. In the spring of 2001, most of my friends were preparing to graduate from college. They were accepting jobs. I was going nowhere in junior college, and I started to get depressed. And the term illegal aliens weighed on me, and I kept thinking to myself, you're not a person. You're just a number, an invalid number. And instead of reaching out for help, I decided to end my life. But you know what I didn't do? You know what never even occurred to me? Move to Mexico. America was my home, and I never once thought of leaving here. It just wasn't in my thought process. After I had a failed suicide attempt, I even felt worse about myself because I thought, you're such a loser. Even that you can't succeed in. And even though I didn't tell anybody, I had a feeling that my mother knew. She must have known. She was living in Florida at the time, and a couple of weeks after my attempt, she drove up to Maryland where I lived, and she put me in her car, and she dragged me to the University of Maryland. She took me to the admissions office inside the Mitchell building, and she started causing a scene. She started demanding help. They were very kindly. They told us, you need to leave and come back when you have an appointment. My mom stood her ground. She wasn't going anywhere. And eventually, an admissions officer was generous enough to invite us into her office. My mom explained to her my entire situation, and she pleaded with her. She simply said, please, my son wants to go to college. I was embarrassed. I just really wanted to get out of there. And I don't know why, but she decided to help us. And she handed me an application, and she told me to fill it out. I got to a particular section that would qualify me for in-state or out-of-state tuition. The problem was, in my status, I couldn't qualify for either. This is why every time I applied anywhere, I got rejected. But that year, my mom had actually become a legal alien resident. And the admissions officer asked her for her alien resident card. She handed it to me and she said, put this number in your application. 2 weeks later, I'd been accepted to the University of Maryland. I was given an opportunity. I was given a chance to fulfill my dream of getting a college degree. And even though it would be a very difficult challenge, I still had a path to success. As a junior college transfer, I was going to have to complete 70 credits. They recommended that I would do this over the course of 6 semesters. But each semester would cost $3,500. And that was more money than I had ever seen in my entire life. So I was determined to do it in 4. Against my counselor's advice, I got special permission to take 19 credits my very first semester. And in the following 3 semesters, I would take no less than 17 credits. I worked a minimum of 40 hours a week, earning minimum wage, and I had to drive 45 minutes to campus because I was living on my own and I couldn't afford to be any closer. But despite all these challenges, At the end of the 2 years, I accomplished my goal. This is the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. And I want to tell you about the happiest day of my life, because it wasn't graduation day. The happiest day of my life happened 5 weeks before graduation. In the spring of 2003, I was carrying enough credits where I knew I would graduate. My grades were really good. There was no way I could fail. University of Maryland has something called the Turpin Payment Plan, which allowed me to break up my tuition into monthly payments. I went to the Lee building, the financial building. I had one payment left. I had a credit card in my pocket that had a balance of 0. And as I stood in line, there was joy in my heart because I kept thinking, I did it. I did it. And I knew that even if it took me the rest of my life to pay off those $700 on that credit card, I had earned my degree. I had accomplished my goal. The next month, I walked with my class, completely debt-free. And when I tell people this story, they always tell me what a remarkable accomplishment that was. But the funny thing is, as I was going through it, I never thought to myself, wow, this is remarkable. This is impressive. The only thing I knew is that I had a goal, and I was going to do anything and everything I had to accomplish it. And I share this part of my story with you because it taught me one of the most valuable lessons in life. And that is that for any of us, you, me, it doesn't matter, any of us, if we want to do something remarkable, if we want to do something out of the scope of what we believe is possible, the only thing necessary is for us to believe that success is the only option and that there is no other option. Tony Robbins put it this way: if you give people the choice between success or death, most people will choose success. If you have a dream, if there's something you want to do with your life and you're not sure you can do it, my advice to you is to go after it as if success is your only option. And there is no other option. And I am amazed to learn that this is actually more difficult for citizens than it is for immigrants. One of the wonderful things about this country is that hundreds of millions of people have access to comforts a lot of the rest of the world doesn't. And these comforts make it difficult for us to risk our dreams. But I'm an undocumented immigrant. I have an unfair advantage. I don't have a choice. In 2013, I got an MBA from the University of Maryland. But if I was to walk out of here today and walk into Best Buy, I couldn't get a job as a cashier. I had to build a business. If I hadn't done that, I wouldn't have a life. I wouldn't have a job. And I want you to understand, it's not a fluke that so many of the entrepreneurs in this country are immigrants or the children of immigrants. For us, success is the only option. Which leads me to the second lesson my journey has taught me. And that is that immigrants are the key to fulfilling the American dream. I had a conversation once with a professor. His name is Michael Yehuda. He's a brilliant man. And he looked at me and he said, Uriel, why is it that you believe that America is the greatest country in the world? I said, the Constitution. Our system of government provides upward mobility for everybody. And he said, if the Constitution is so great, how come it's never worked anywhere else? To which I replied, no one's ever tried. He quickly informed me that many countries have tried. And they have failed miserably to even come close to the type of success that we've had here. A couple years later, I had another conversation with a friend of mine named Joe Moore. My story of being an undocumented immigrant was about to be published in the Washington Post, and I wanted the people that I care about to hear from me. But Joe was a pretty conservative Republican, and I wasn't sure he would understand. I couldn't even look him in the eye as I apologized for who I was. And he shouted at me. He said, what are you sorry for? And as I looked him in the eye, I realized that he was right. What was I sorry for? I had done nothing wrong in my life. And I knew in that moment that I would never again feel ashamed, that I would never again apologize for who I was. And then Joe explained to me why immigrants are the secret to America's success. He said, Uriel, America is not the greatest country in the world because the smartest people come here. It's not the greatest country in the world because the wealthiest people come here. It's not even the greatest country in the world because the most beautiful people come here. America is the greatest country in the world because the bravest people come here. He said, I want you to think about a mother in South or Central America, child in hand, making the journey across several nations, only to arrive at a land where she doesn't speak the language, she doesn't have any money, she may not know anybody, and she has no idea how she's going to provide for her family. But she does all this because she wants to give her children a chance at a better life. America is the greatest country in the world because courageous mothers, like my mother, sacrifice everything so that their children can one day build a better world for all of us. Please understand, the American dream is for everybody, citizens and immigrants alike. But without immigrants, it could die. It's my experience that this country works best when immigrants and citizens work together to build it. What my journey has taught me is that the best thing I can do with my life is serve others. But that service has come at a price. In the last 2 years since my story has been published, I've actually spoken to thousands of students in dozens of venues like this one. I talked to them about immigration and following your dreams. These talks, including this one, make me more public in public. And every day when I go to work now, I look at my front door and I ask myself, is today the day? Is today the day that ICE will walk through that door, place me in handcuffs, and rip me away from my family and deport me overnight? But it's a risk that I'm glad to take, because doing these talks, working with these students, has taught me one simple truth. And that is that as long as this is the land of opportunity, people like me are going to do everything in our power to make this the greatest country in the world. We're going to continue to fight. We're going to continue to sacrifice. We're going to continue to endure. Or we're going to die trying. Thank you.